Well, good morning. Let me call this meeting to order, and we'll go ahead and begin. Before I do, I want to ask any of the members here, any comments that anybody would like to share this morning? That may be the best comments we've spoken in a while. Thank you. Good to see everybody this morning. I do want to welcome, of course, Tina Piper always from the Attorney General's office, and I think we have Kevin Baldwin here from ARS. Kevin, where are you? Yes.
He won't be here till 11, sir.
Okay. I thought he was on the way, going to be at the meeting. Well, it's good to see everybody here. I'm going to call on Anita Cloud to open us in a time of prayer this morning.
Good morning. You know, with this month, we have over 28 unique holidays to include American Heart Month, Valentine's Day, the beginning of our Lenten season, Black History Month. But in all of the celebration, let us not forget to love our neighbors as ourselves, and that the foundation of any history is His story. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you again for allowing us to come together one more time. Lord, to do the business that you have assigned to our hands. So we ask your blessings this morning on this parole board, on all those that are here under the sound of our voices. We ask your blessings upon those who are suffering because of the epidemic that is going around and the lives that are lost. But yet, before we leave here, we ask your blessings on this great nation, on this state, and especially upon this agency. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for those words and that prayer. At this time, we'll go ahead and approve our agenda. I believe all the members have the agenda there and sent out earlier. Is there a motion that we approve the agenda?
Hear your motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. It's like the ayes have it. We also need to adopt our minutes from our previous meeting. I believe everybody's had the opportunity to review those already. They were emailed earlier. Give you just a second to look over them if you need to.
Mr. Chairman, if minutes to be correct, I make a motion we adopt.
All right, a motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes clearly have it. At this time, old business. Is there any old business to be discussed? Seeing none, we'll continue with the next item on the agenda. And the next item on the agenda is new business. So we'll begin our new business, but I do want to, sometimes I forget, but I usually remember and I forget. Mike Crabb from DCS, always glad to have DCS here working with us. We value that relationship, and Harris Childers as well. Thank you for, I know you have lots to do, and thank you for being here. And we always want to keep that communication line open. We work together. What we do affects you, and what you do affects us, and we are a team, so thank you so much. Any words you'd like to say? All right, okay. All right. Well, since there is no old business, we'll go into new business, and I believe we've got 10 policies, proposed board changes to the policies, and I'll call on Chris Kimner at this time to come and present those to the board. And just in the essence of trying to make good use of our time, I'll ask Mr. Kimner if you would to go over the proposed changes, and then if we could, if a member has a question after they've all been gone over, then we'll go back and refer to those, and we can vote on them all at once. And certainly want all the members to ask any questions they may have. So if you have a question, just jot it down, and then we'll let Chris go back to it and we'll get an answer. All right, Chris.
Yes, sir. Good morning. The revisions were sent to the board on January 30th for your review.
Chris, is your microphone on there?
I don't believe it is. It is now.
Okay.
Can you hear me, sir?
We can. We want everybody in the world to be able to hear you.
Fantastic. All right. So January 30th, the board revisions were sent to the board for your review. There are a total of 9 policy revisions along with 1 policy repeal. The details were explained per board policy. Would you like me to enumerate them in detail?
If you could just give us a summary, if any of the members would like for one to be enumerated in detail.
All of them are basically just house clearing things, just simple changes to terms, and nothing significant. Just the 1 policy repeal would be, of course, anything significant.
If you would, Chris, why don't you just go over the heading of each one, what section that we're changing, and
Sure.
and if there is a question, then we'll know. I know a lot of these are just updates and bringing us in line with changes that have been made in law.
Yes, sir. The first board policy up for revision would be Board Policy 1.120, which is ethical guidelines. It just updates the date of executive order that was referenced in the source materials. It also does the same in sections 1.101 and 1.106.1. As a result of that new executive order that was signed back in March 2017, a couple of the other issues, such as the gift amount, it was increased from 25 to 75, and modified language as a result of that updated executive order. As far as the next board policy 2.112, equipment assignment acquisition, it just added the term clemency in reference to the budgets in which equipment assignment acquisition is made. It also, in section 1.106.4.4, added reference to Georgia Code section that allows the officer to retain the retired badge when retired. Board policy 2.113, use of force, it just updates the new taser models from X26 to X2. Board policy 2.114, local detention use. It updated the updates the applicability, thank you. Section 1.103 of this policy was changed from supervision releases to the issuance of board warrants. Also, section 1.105, it also adds text for clarification, 1.106.1 and 1.106.2. It refers to the old field operations manual is now been replaced with reference to board policy. The board policy 2.117, which is cooperation with institutional higher learning, that is the board policy that was repealed. Board policy 3.300, training programs. It removed a section that addresses administrative orientation, which no longer exists or is in use. It also renumbered all the effective sections that are a result. Section 1.106.5, updated title, updated one title of Director of Training Investigation Compliance to just simply Director of Training. 3.302, which is outside agency training. It updated the online expense system to read the current system that we're using, which is Concur Travel and Expense. 3.303, which is training evaluation and review. It just simplified the paragraph in regards to submitting evaluation results of training to the executive director. 3.306, which is employee placement and post-instructor training. It removed text, which included assistant director of their division, just to simplify it for requests, it would just go directly to the director of training past their supervisor's approval. And 3.307, employee placement and command college program, it just simply updated the title of director of parole to executive director.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kenner. Are there any questions from board members?
I have one, Mr. Chairman. Chris, back on the Corporation of Institutions of Higher Learning, I noticed that came into effect back in 1994. Do you have any history on this, how we come to adopt this policy? It's been a long time. No one on this board was part of that, but do you happen to know that?
Right. I personally do not. I know that it was under field services. I don't know if they could shed any light as far as that, since it just started under them. But I don't.
Is this being repealed because it was actually something that dealt more so with field services and not with claimants?
That's right. It's no longer for the field, just because of our duties have changed since the DCS and parole split.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from any members? All right, hearing no more questions, as stated by Mr. Kimner earlier, each one of the board policies and as listed on your agenda, is there a motion that we adopt these board policies as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the ayes clearly have it, although it was close.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kimler, for your presentation. At this time, I'll call upon our director for the director's report, Mr. Chris Barnett.
Good morning. Let me take this opportunity, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and the entire board. Thank you for your continued support and guidance and leadership as we continue to strive to make this the #1 paroling authority in the nation. I'll try to keep my remarks brief this morning as to allow an opportunity for some of our senior staff to make some special presentations to the board. But as a general overview, operationally, we continue to seek out opportunities to enhance our effectiveness and efficiency throughout the agency by examining our people, processes, and technology. We remain committed to our mission and to our operational priorities, our brand, the 4 E's, engaging all of our stakeholders, educating the community on the parole process here in Georgia, encouraging all of our stakeholders to take an active participation in the parole process, and enhancing our overall process. I think you'll hear from some of the presentation this morning, some indicators of some projects that we have engaged in to further that brand of the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. At this time, I'd like to call to the microphone Governmental Relations Director Kim Patton Johnson for her report.
I am the governor, right? You say governor.
Governmental.
Governor, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Mills, Vice Chairman Cotton, and board members. I'm just going to provide for you a very brief legislative report. And then if you guys have any questions or would like to meet to discuss anything, I'm available to you at any time. But today is day 16 of the legislative session. Crossover day is February 28th, and the last day of the session is March 29th. That's a Thursday, the Thursday before Good Friday. Okay. I wanted to mention some key changes in leadership. You might already be aware, but just in case you guys were not. In the Senate, Butch Miller replaces David Schaefer as the Senate President Pro Tem. Schaefer, of course, resigned from that leadership role because he's running for Lieutenant Governor. Senator John Albers becomes the chairman of the Senate Public Safety Committee. He is also the chairman of the Appropriations, Criminal Justice, and Public Safety Committee. In the House, only a few changes. Robert Trammell becomes the minority leader as Stacey Abrams resigned to campaign for governor. James Beverly became the minority caucus chair to replace Stacey Evans, who also resigned to run for governor. In the House, Representative Alan Powell remains the chairman of the House Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee, and Andrew Welch remains the chairman of the House Appropriations Public Safety Committee. We are currently tracking and analyzing proposed legislation daily. For time's sake, like I said, I won't give you an individual list, but if you would like to know what we're analyzing, I'm available to meet with you all. As far as other legislation, House Bill 683, supplemental budget, will be read in the House today. So it is expected to pass. The Senate has actually already began holding budget hearings. So it should go, hopefully, to Senate in the next couple of days. Criminal justice reform, I wanted to mention what was going on with that. We are anticipating that bill any day now. It hasn't actually come out. But some areas that they concentrated on this year were misdemeanor bail reform and enhanced felony penalties for firearm charges, theft of firearm, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and also they concentrated a lot on straw purchases or a person knowingly purchasing a firearm for someone who's not legally eligible to own a firearm. Some other things that they are considering are expanding the arrest by citation for certain low-level misdemeanors, expanding the first offender ceiling to those who were already completing a first offender sentence when the legislation passed in 2016. And that's basically the extent of my report, if you all have any questions. Not, okay.
Thank you, Kim. I know you will. Just continue to keep an eye on legislation that might affect us in any way.
I will, and I'll continue to keep you all updated on what that legislation is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, Kim. I'd ask now for our Public Relations Director, Steve Hayes, to come up and make a presentation regarding our annual report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. Before you have a printed copy of the annual report for fiscal year 2017. I hope as you review it, you'll agree that it's professionally done, and the document includes information necessary to describe for the public our agencies and the board's critical public safety role in Georgia's criminal justice system. This is to include the informed, scientific, and data-driven parole decision-making process, the process of addressing non-compliance, ensuring public safety through addressing parole violations, and our service to crime victims. Up on the screen we have the online version, and also I might mention weekly we're highlighting through our social media various sections of the annual report as another method of making our information available to a wider public. If it pleases the board, I'll take just a few minutes to quickly move through the online version, stopping momentarily to highlight some of the information. Every year there are additions to the report, which speaks to the overall enhancements to our operations as an agency. Our cover includes an overall theme which speaks to the board's primary function, and that message is relayed throughout the report. On the inside cover, of course, we have our mission, vision, and value statements, as well as the agency's 4 E's, which guide the day-to-day operations of the agency. We have the organizational, skipped over that one, organizational structure of the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. And then we turn to the introduction and highlights section. And these 2 pages summarize the fiscal year's accomplishments. They summarize how we continue to engage the public, our stakeholders, and our partners, including our service to crime victims in order to fulfill our mission. Among the highlights I might mention is the update or revision to our parole decision guidelines rating system, which is also included later in the clemency section of the annual report. We highlight our notifications to the judiciary, law enforcement, victims, and the community. Next, we have our chairman's letter, which serves as an introduction to the full report. It also includes information about the board's functions, criminal justice role, and again highlights from the fiscal year. The next section covers our history, why the parole board was created, including the people of Georgia's decision to create this board. And then we move to the board members section. And in this section we have our individual board members highlighted with their individual biographies in detail. And our next section is the executive leadership. It's, of course, our executive director, Chris Barnett, and deputy executive director, Rita Rocker, and their bios. And we have a message which is from the director, which also provides even more information highlighting fiscal year 17 and our critical public safety mission. The clemency division is the next section. We have the clemency and parole consideration section of the report. The decision-making parole consideration process is explained in detail to include information behind or what drives the informed, scientific, data-driven decisions delivered daily by you, members of the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. And as previously mentioned, we also have information that was in the highlights section in more detail to include our notifications process, as well as the update to the guidelines. Further along in the Clemency Division, one of the enhancements to this year's report was to include information that the members consider when making a decision, as well as the many public documents included in a parole case file, as well as those protected from disclosure by state law. Now, this is information that points to an open and public process and also speaks to the data-driven and informed parole decision. The section also describes how the board's decisions are thorough and made in the interest of public safety. Again, we included information about the notifications, including both those which are required by law and those where you, the board members, have gone above and beyond what is required to ensure that the board has all available information before making a parole decision, and in order to ensure transparency in the process as well as an informed public. We have a section on life sentences as well as the state law governing those. And the Pardon Administration Unit, which continues to work to improve that process. And as the chairman states in the opening letter, that work includes a pardon application that is more comprehensive than ever before. Our investigator's role is described and highlighted. It's an important role as far as assembling the case information for the board. And we have perhaps a 30,000-foot view of the entire parole consideration process, which shows a process that is thorough, includes many staff hours of case preparation in order that the board is informed, has the necessary data to make that parole decision. On to field services, where the mission is primarily to manage the process relating to violations of parole, to include revocation of the offender if necessary. Parole violations, warrants, and the revocation process is fully detailed. It's very informative. We also cover the other major functions of the division, which are the GCIC unit, the important role of the district operations manager, who investigates parole violations and manages that process, and the Interstate Compact Unit and the Scanning and Imaging Unit. All necessary critical components of the day-to-day operations, ensuring public safety, ensuring violations are addressed quickly, and those offenders who have become a public safety threat are removed from the community and returned to prison if necessary. I know I'm moving through this pretty rapidly. We have statistics throughout the report. Move past those in clemency, but just draw your attention to those in field services, which includes cost of parole per day, cost of prison incarceration per day, and our national average compared to our state average on parole completion rates. And again, in Georgia, successfully completing parole, 71% of our cases compared to an estimated national average of 62%. We continue to outpace the national average every year. And next we have the Georgia Office of Victim Services. This section, of course, highlights the many services provided to the registered crime victim, to include the notification process, the VIP program, Victim Offender Dialogue Program, and of course our highly successful Victims Visitors Days, which have gone on each year since 2006. Shalandra Robertson, the director, and her staff do a fantastic job serving victims. And for the public, if you are a victim of crime not registered, please contact her office to get registered and ensure notification of the offender's parole status and parole decisions. Closing it out, we highlight our budget, human resources, and training offices. These are critical support offices that make our overall agency operations possible and ensure that we complete our public safety mission, the board's primary function of making informed, data-driven parole decisions in order to serve public safety. Again, I hope you and the public finds the report professional and informative. We have some hard copies here. If anyone in the audience would like one, any of our staff, we can get those to you as well. If you have any questions, I know I moved through that rapidly, trying to be cognizant of our time because we still have another presentation.
Steve, I just want to say, this is the best report I have seen since I've been on the board, and what an excellent job you have done in helping educate, really, anyone who takes the time to look online as to what the board does. And part of the task of this board becoming more transparent in all that we do is sometimes just a lack of people understanding what we do. So thank you. Any board members have any comments?
I have a comment, Mr. Chair. Steve, it appears that 50% of the photographs that are in this document that I'm in have the same tile on it. I think I only had 2 ties, but next year can we make me maybe diversify my apparel in the...
No problem at all. In all seriousness, I do want to thank all of the input from staff, the units and offices and divisions. Without the information and without the assistance to get me the information in a timely manner, we could not put this report together. And of course, that information is vital to get out to the public as well. But I'll say that, you know, it's a learning situation each and every year. We work with a couple of vendors to get this done, but some of the placement of photographs and the choosing of photographs, I send them a bevy of those, and then I try to fix what I see. So it's a learning situation, but we'll make sure that we get you in a couple of different ties.
And Steve, I once met a photographer who was pretty good at taking photographs and changing the colors. So we could put polka dots on sometimes, and stripes on others. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen again next time.
Yeah, take a couple pounds off me too.
Yeah. I want to mention this also, that I agree with the chairman. This is probably the most comprehensive report that's been placed or put out in the 7 years I've been on the board, and it's so very informative. So it tells the story of parole very, very well. My question is, how are you going to make it better next year?
A lot of work, a lot of input from staff, but I have no doubt we'll do it. Each year we do so. So I can almost guarantee it.
Sounds good.
That'll wrap up my section of today's meeting, and I'd like right now. Sure, producer.
Yeah, the guy behind it. Thank you, Steve. I'd like to echo the board's comments. A very professional, informative document, and I'd just like to thank Steve for 6 months of hard work on this to represent our agency so well. So if we could give Steve a round of applause.
Yes, if I could just for a moment, I had a thought as we were going through this that I meant to mention earlier, and all of this is great information, but one of the things that I think is important to the general public and others understanding what this board does is that by the time the decision comes to the board, staffers in the board of our agency have already put hours and hours into each decision that is made by summarizing, researching, bringing to the members all that information before we ever make a decision. And I'm not so sure that, we're always battling as a board here in Georgia. Most people think of Shawshank Redemption and they think of what they've seen on TV or in a movie. And there's much more that goes into each decision that is made. And I just again want to thank Steve for all the things that he put in here, but especially for that.
Fantastic. Thank you, and with that, I will call to the podium Miss Anita Clouds, our Community Affairs Director, for another presentation.
Thank you, Director Barnett, and good morning again. Steve's presentation provided a great segue into this presentation. We are here to share with you our current project, which is a comprehensive presentation on all aspects of the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. This was produced by Steve Hayes, Kim Patton Johnson, and myself, with the assistance of various divisions within this agency. It is designed to be a segmented, comprehensive PowerPoint slide presentation for distribution on our website and social media. Also, the staff can utilize it when they make public presentations by extracting specific segments from that. It is designed to educate and inform the public at large about the criminal justice and parole safety role of the Georgia State Board of Pardons and Paroles. But not only to educate, but also to engage internal and external stakeholders, elicit participation, and enhance our message and our mission. The entire presentation will cover field services, clemency, and victim services. We are currently in the process of finalizing the information on the slides and editing the voiceover for the clemency segment. We've completed an opening segment, which is the history of parole, and that is what we'd like to share with you today. So, at this time, we would like to present to you our first segment.
Like the federal government, parole is defined.
Well, now, did I not do that?
Parole is defined as the We begin with the history of parole.
If anything will go
Welcome
wrong,
to
it
the
will.
Georgia State Board of Pardons and Paroles. In this presentation, the responsibility and authority of the agency will be explained, as well as the agency's functions, including the parole decision-making process. Welcome to the Georgia State Board of Pardons and Paroles.
This
In
is so good we had to hear it
presentation,
twice.
The responsibility and authority of the agency will be explained, as well as the agency's functions, including the parole decision-making process. We begin with the history of parole in Georgia. Like the federal government, the typical state strengthened its checks and balances by giving pardoning power to its executive branch. However, as a tool for rehabilitating ex-offenders and protecting society, a pardon was limited. It was too abrupt and irrevocable. A more flexible system was needed which would supervise after release and deter misconduct through the threat of revocation. This need was met by the introduction of a new type of clemency called parole. Parole is defined as the discretionary decision of the State Board of Pardons and Paroles to release a certain offender from confinement after he or she has served an appropriate portion of a prison sentence. Persons on parole remain under state supervision and control according to conditions which, if violated, allow for re-imprisonment. The first legislation in the United States authorizing parole was enacted in Massachusetts in 1837. By 1880, 3 states had parole, and by 1889, the number had grown to 12. By 1944, all 48 states had enacted parole legislation. Parole came to Georgia in 1908 when the General Assembly voted to give the Prison Commission authority to implement a system of parole or conditional pardons. Parole could be granted upon the approval of the full commission and the governor. The commission had the power to issue warrants and arrest parole violators, arbitrarily allowing or disallowing credit for time served on parole. After 12 months, a parolee was eligible for consideration for a full pardon and restoration of rights of citizenship. During the next decade, the Prison Commission observed the benefits of parole in equalizing disparate sentencing across the state. They also reported the advantages of assigning responsible persons to help the offenders reestablish themselves in society. While the general principle of parole was appreciated, the system itself remained primitive and understaffed. In 1938, the Prison Commission was redesignated the State Prison and Parole Commission, and the administration of the penal camps and institutions was taken from the Commission and placed under the State Board of Penal Administration. The Commission was given broader powers to grant paroles without approval of the governor and without limitation on its authority. However, the Commission was limited by a shortage of funds, having only 6 parole officers on its staff in 1940. In the early 1940s, there were serious questions raised about the handling of pardons. public concern led the General Assembly to enact legislation signed into law in February 1943, creating the State Board of Pardons and Paroles as an independent agency to administer executive clemency. In August of 1943, Georgia voters ratified a landmark amendment to the state constitution, which established the State Board of Pardons and Paroles authorized to grant various forms of clemency. The board was also made the sole authority in Georgia to commute a death sentence. The parole board has a critical public safety role in Georgia's criminal justice system. The Georgia Parole Board's mission is to serve the citizens of Georgia by exercising the constitutional authority of executive clemency through informed decision-making, thereby ensuring public safety, protecting victims' rights, and providing offenders with opportunities for positive change. The Parole Board was created as an independent constitutional agency separate from the legislative and judicial branches of government. As a part of the executive branch, the Parole Board manages the finite resource of state prison beds by considering eligible offenders and making parole grants in the interest of public safety. Georgia's Parole Board consists of 5 full-time members who are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the state senate to 7-year staggered terms. The Parole Board is authorized to exercise various forms of clemency. Later in this presentation, more details will be provided on the types of clemency decisions. The Parole Board has the additional authority to restore civil and political rights, commute death sentences, and grant a stay of execution. When someone is convicted of a felony, he or she loses certain rights. The board has the authority to restore those rights. Some of those rights include the right to serve on a jury, the right to serve as a notary public, and the right to seek and hold public office. For an offender who was sentenced to death, the board has the authority to reduce the sentence to life with parole eligibility or to